At that time, I must admit, I was emotionally, spiritually, physically bankrupt.
It is true. I was nobody.
And the winner is Rocky.
What Rocky did was give a lot of people hope.
I've never been more inspired for something in my life. That movie changed the world.
That flick shifted the culture. It begs the question, how does a penniless, struggling performer manage to create and lead a legendary masterpiece? I was basically human wallpaper. I lived in the shadows playing pathetic parts, like some passed-out wretch people just stepped over. My wallet held 100 new showers, but the rent was 300, plus I had an expecting wife and a massive bull mastiff. Fed up with garbage gigs, Stallone decided to forge his own path. I spent my days cooped up in a tiny, cramped flat. From the edge of my mattress, I could literally touch the window and the door at once. I'd lounge in bed with a legal pad and my pen, just cranking out story after story. Most of those early pieces, however, were total fluff. Desperation hit hard when he pawned his dog Butkus for a mere $40 just to stay housed. Something had to give. If I was destined for career suicide, I at least needed the satisfaction of knowing I tried. That realization is what really lit the fuse. On March 24th, 1975, a vision emerged. Ali was the heavy favorite, while Wepner was seen as a total longshot. It's over. Could he actually survive 15 rounds against the legendary champ Muhammad Ali? There's a huge misconception regarding the origin. Everyone thinks it was simply about watching Chuck Wepner knock Muhammad Ali to the canvas. Seeing that left-hand land was unbelievable. But the truth is, the showdown between Ali and Wepner was just one piece of the creative puzzle. The second influence is hidden in plain sight throughout the film. You've got that same grit as the original Rock. You mirror his rhythm and soul. Seeing a guy my size like Marciano face Ali in 1970 triggered the idea. Hollywood elites were clueless about Marciano. Wepner's struggle felt more relevant. One round left, and he's clearly exhausted and battered. His mug was pulverized. I grabbed that image of a local nobody standing tall against a titan. Chuck Wepner fell just short. Even as he staggered, his courage was absolutely undeniable. I channeled my career frustrations as a starving artist directly into the character of a gritty underdog boxer. Lacking an agent myself, I ensured he lacked a manager too. We were both isolated figures, completely devoid of any romance in our lives back then. That is exactly how the concept was born. No representation, just one guy. When you translate your own lived reality onto the page, the narrative tends to flow with an effortless, organic rhythm. I sat down to write, focusing on a specific trifecta of ingredients. I wanted to blend raw soul, explosive drive, and genuine humor. In a feverish 3-day blur, the screenplay was born. The result was nothing short of brilliant. Every major studio in town was desperate to secure the rights. Although Stallone was penniless, he shocked executives by rejecting a $25,000 offer. When you have never held that kind of money, you do not really feel the loss of walking away from it. Basically, if you've never cruised in luxury, a beat-up car feels perfectly fine. You don't know what you're missing. Beyond that, taking $500,000 would have poisoned my soul once the cash dried up. I preferred failing by my own rules. I needed to prove my acting chops, since those tiny cameos never showed if I was gifted or just a fraud. Sly threw down the gauntlet. He plays the lead or there's no movie. Hollywood execs weren't sold on a nobody though. They wanted the script, not the man. They were so terrified of casting him that they kept throwing bigger piles of cash just to make him vanish. The offer hit $265,000 for him to step aside. Back in 1975, that was like 1.5 million today. Imagine being penniless with a child on the way. Could you actually refuse $1.5 million? That takes incredible cold-blooded nerve. I realized that if the movie became a hit without me, the regret would eat me alive forever. Sometimes you just have to gamble everything and wing it. I told myself I had to take the plunge. I had to go for it. Even if I crashed and burned others with me, my faith in the project was absolute. United Artists became his only real chance. Gradually, they started sensing there might be something special there. They got swept up in the daring nature of the pitch. They finally greenlit it, but only as a low-budget project. The budget was a tiny fraction of a blockbuster, roughly $1 million. That's basically the price of a decent commercial nowadays. The deal was strictly under $1 million, with a tight 25-day shooting schedule. No extensions allowed. The producers literally bet their houses and every possession they owned on this one shot. Everyone was playing for keeps back then. Operating on a shoestring budget creates immense pressure for the cast and crew, as nobody can afford to mess up a single shot. Yet, those financial hurdles actually sparked some of the film's most brilliant moments. Rocky and Adrian's first date was still on the horizon, originally written as 6 or 7 pages of mindless diner talk. I pointed out that such a dry sequence would likely kill the momentum. The idea shifted to an ice skating rink filled with background actors. Unfortunately, the production funds simply weren't there to hire enough extras to fill that space. I proposed making the rink closed to the public. The emptiness actually made the whole scene feel more special. That vacant rink feels far more heartfelt and captivating than a chaotic scene with people crashing into one another. It arguably became the ultimate symbol for their unique, private world. A pair of lost souls, barely keeping one another afloat. Take that moment where Rocky is contemplating the looming brawl, for instance. Hey Jurgens, the artwork is off. You see what I'm saying? My gear has a red stripe on white trousers. The promoter basically insults him right there. Who cares though, right? None of this was actually in the original screenplay. That advertisement should have been drawn correctly, but they couldn't afford a reprint, so they flipped the script instead. It worked perfectly. It reinforces the whole long shot vibe of the film. Same thing happened with Stallone's massive boxing robe. They couldn't buy a new one, so they ad-libbed. Hey Adrian, this thing looks a bit oversized, don't you think? Best of luck. That specific line elevated everything, highlighting the gap between Rocky's novice status and Apollo's flashy style. If you've watched it, that orange being tossed probably sticks out. We didn't have the budget for a crowd. The guy who chucks that fruit wasn't even hired for the production. We just cruised around in a van with a portable camera. I'd hop out and Garrett Brown would catch me sprinting while locals threw random stuff. They had zero clue who I was. To them, I was just some weirdo in a hideous grey tracksuit invading their turf. Someone actually chucked fruit at me, but we pivoted and kept rolling. It was the perfect glimpse into how the city itself became a central figure in the film. See, I lived there after my folks split up, dropped out of school at 15, and spent my days driving a forklift for my stepdad down at the docks. I knew those streets inside out. During the writing process, I realized the town had its own identity apart from the Big Apple. It's a hard-nosed environment where the local sports icons act like the neglected, rough-and-tumble relatives of Manhattan. That atmosphere breeds a permanent sense of defiance. After investigating the local boxing scene, I found that fighters like Joe Frazier and Bernard Hopkins belonged to a completely distinct, rugged category. The story demanded a city that mirrored the underdog, something industrial and bleak that had seen better days. If a miracle was going to happen anywhere in this country, it was going to be there. Sylvester and I were dead set on filming in Pennsylvania. The money men shut us down immediately. They wouldn't pay for a union crew to travel from Los Angeles, insisting we stay in California, period. Can you picture the film without that Philly grit? It would have been a total joke. To pull it off, they had to get creative with the budget. The plan was to film on site until the unions eventually caught wind of what we were doing. I had to keep a low profile because if the labor reps found out, they'd shut the entire operation down. It was a skeleton crew where everyone was pulling double duty. They flew in a non-union team from New York at the 0 hour to stay under the radar. Most of those iconic outdoor shots, like the run through South Philly, were captured right on the pavement. Most of the time, we didn't even have permission. The team had to move fast and finish the shot before the cops or City Hall noticed. Utilizing those authentic spots didn't just save cash. That raw, dirty atmosphere gave the film its soul, making it hit home for millions. I lived and breathed this movie as a kid. I used to skip right to the 14th round every single time. Seeing Apollo Creed pummel Rocky while everyone screamed for him to stay down was intense. Apollo had his arms up in victory, thinking the scrap was finally over. Then he turns around and sees this guy clawing his way back up, and that look on Apollo's face changed me forever. He looked at him like he was seeing a ghost. I've probably watched that specific round in the first film over 1,000 times. I've lost track. I refuse to give up. Despite the chaos of my youth and the mess in my family, I had dreams to chase. Watching this movie taught me how to envision my own success. The first version of the ending was actually quite different. Rocky, I love you. He lasts the whole fight but intentionally loses at the finish line. It was a noble gesture, but it didn't fit. The champ gets carried off while Rocky just disappears into the crowd. He finds Adrian, she gives him a quick embrace, and they walk toward the back. It felt hollow and unsatisfying. I played it for my wife and she hated it. She thought Rocky came off as mean and unlikable because I'd made him too much of a hardened street thug. Back then, movies felt cynical. Everything was anti-establishment and gloomy, leaving nobody for the audience to actually cheer for. I wanted to pivot back towards stories where doing the right thing actually mattered. I thought it would be fascinating if the first thing he says after the final bell is a question about her hat. Forget his gear, the man is so head over heels that he overlooks his mangled face and pulverized hands, focusing solely on his historic triumph. Victory was never the goal because he knew the champ was untouchable, a level of realism that defined his character. While others spoke of winning, he prepared for a beatdown. Losing that match wouldn't have changed a thing. Even if he split my scalp open again, the result would be exactly the same. If I can stay mobile and keep my feet, then I have made it. Going the full distance and standing tall when the bell rings is my only requirement. For the first time, I felt a sense of worth. I finally proved I wasn't just another random nobody from the streets. During that final hug, the director and I opted to pause the film right as his face beamed with pure ecstasy. Can you imagine a better way to end the story than by trapping the hero in that one golden second of victory? That brief flash of time was the most fulfilling experience he would ever know. It seems impossible now given its massive legacy, but we initially thought the movie would flop. I truly believed it would just be a filler flick at some dusty outdoor cinema in the Deep South. The release was tiny at first. I remember it playing in Philadelphia and a handful of other spots. I picked up the New York Times and saw this absolutely brutal review. The critic completely trashed it, calling it a total disaster. I was hunkered down near the entrance, reeling from a savage write-up. When Peter Falk stepped out, he looked at me and shouted, "Hey, you did it!" "Check out this terrible write-up," I told Peter, but he insisted I disregard the critics and focus on the reaction. "Go check it out," he told me. The audience was going ballistic, jumping and screaming with excitement. It was an absolute riot that no one anticipated. Seeing a crowd that moved, weeping with joy, is something truly rare. That moment confirmed our success, showing how this story sparked a fire of optimism. To me, the character represented pure psychological resilience through a grueling physical struggle. That morning grind looked so intense that I felt compelled to mirror it myself. At 7, I was already gulping down raw eggs and racing through the neighborhood like a pro. Motivation reached an all-time high. This goes to all the underdogs fighting their own battles right now. This masterpiece became the year's top-earning hit, changing lives across the globe. He was so dedicated he would have worked for a pastry and a simple sandwich. The paycheck was totally irrelevant. He just needed a platform to finally show the world his true value. Much like the underdog hero, this struggling creator won big and finally reunited with his precious dog, Butkus. My name is Adam. You're tuned into Screen Puff. If this journey resonated with you, stick around for our next deep dive. Thanks for the support.